And we're back.
Welcome to No Direction Beyond, your source for Starfinder news, reviews, and interviews. I'm Alexander Agunas, No Direction's own everyman gamer, and I'm joined as always by the most intrepid Starfinder this side of the galaxy. He's so intrepid you can't even see him on screen if you're watching live right now. James.
Hi, I used to write Code Switch, and I'm moving faster than the speed of light, so you can't perceive me.
That's right. James is actually in the cockpit of our mech for today because I have the one and only. What is the technical term? Is it the Space Princess of Mecha?
Oh, yes, yes, clearly, that is the technical term.
Good, good. I'm happy to welcome Jenny Jarzabski back to the show. Did I get it right? 10
You
points for me?
did, you did.
Yeah. See, that's how
Doing
you
good
know
so far.
I've had you multiple times now. It's like,
Yeah,
all
you can
right,
actually remember
I know how to say it. It's breaking it down into the syllables. It works. It's good. Well, thank you again for coming back to the show. Um, Obviously, you've been here before, so our listeners are familiar. But it's been a while. James and I haven't done a whole lot of. I don't think you've been here since we did the soldier thing with you and Thirsty, right?
it. Yeah, I feel like that's the last time.
So that's like
I think so.
October. So
Yeah.
why don't you give a quick rundown to our listeners your Paizo life story? Go.
All right, so hey, I'm Jenny Jarzabski. I am currently a senior developer at Paizo. I primarily work on Starfinder, do a lot of adventure paths like Mechageddon, which we'll be talking about shortly. I've also been working a lot on the Starfinder second edition launch, so I wear a lot of hats there. Like our whole team is pretty flexible on that in that regard. Before that, I was in organized play. I spent a year as the organized play, the leader of the program, taking over from Thirsty. And even before that, before I got hired at Paizo, I was a freelancer who wrote a lot of organized play scenarios, various rulebook, back matter stuff, adventure path volumes for both Pathfinder and Starfinder. But it's no secret that as soon as Starfinder came out, like it's been my thing. Like that's my preference. And we're not here to talk about this today, but now that we're going towards compatibility, it just makes my life so much easier because I don't have to pick favorites quite as much anymore. But Starfinder, it's always been Starfinder for me. So yeah, that's my basic Paizo story, I guess.
Well, I certainly hope that in the future, the next time we have you, you'll say start your actual literal child over the one that's not your actual literal child.
Yes.
But no, yeah, lots of storied and lots of great stuff. I'm sure that we have people who are like, oh, maybe we're gonna get 2E tidbits and lore. But those of you who are
Mhm.
listening, please know that the focus of today is not on second edition. We're actually looking at the send off for first edition, correct?
Yeah, that's right. This will be the grand finale.
The grandest of finales. So tell us a
Yes.
bit about your passion project, your mark, your conclusion, your book end to the Starfinder first edition saga, Mechageddon.
So Mechageddon is going to be it exists, and I actually can show you. I have the
What?
first one of the first copies. This is the special edition, so you can see like the
Oh.
fancy, foiled letters and the fancy bookmarks. Anyway, so Mechageddon is a hardcover adventure path. So it's everything that you would find in a normal adventure path. It is a campaign worthy story. In this case, it takes you from levels 3 to 18, which I know seems like kind of a weird slice of levels, but there's a few reasons for that. One being that primarily in this adventure, you use a lot of mechs. It features the mech combat rules. Go figure, right? Mechageddon is about mech combat. It features the mech rules from Tech Revolution, which has been out for a few years, and of course you can find those rules for free on Archives of Nethys, as well as purchase on Paizo.com or in your friendly local game store. But needless to say, Mechageddon is just kind of a celebration of those rules, and it is an adventure path where that is the central focus. You will still have a character, you will still have character combats, character skill challenges, but a lot of the action happens while your characters are in the cockpit of a mech. So a lot of the adventure deals with kind of customizing your mechs or using mechs that you have access to and maybe upgrading them or trying different models out, just as much as it is about leveling up your character. So yeah, I don't know if you want me to get into premise or just talk like the bones of the thing, but that's kind of like the basic is that it's a an adventure campaign that has a through line plot. However, there's some tools in there as well to try
Hmm.
to help the GM customize their game. Like maybe your players really are into like going on patrols or they're really into a certain thing. Like there's tools for giving them a little more options so you can let your players kind of determine determine the direction, but overall there is a plot that kind of brings you through and there's events that happen and tie everything back into the main story.
Nice,
So
nice.
yeah.
So, I mean, let's start with character creation then.
Okay.
This sounds very different because, like, I know that there are some options in Starfinder that are specific to characters who want to drive mechs. Like, I think there's a soldier fighting style, right?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah.
And
So,
yeah,
and you said that primarily most of the action happens inside of your giant mech, right?
correct.
So, like, what types of characters aren't going to be very good in this? Like, is there like a character concept where you're like, yeah, maybe don't bring this to Mechageddon?
I'll be honest. I think that any kind of character can work. And
Hmm.
there we are going to be releasing a player's guide. The player's guide is a free PDF, separate
Hmm.
from the AP. That will, I think, our plan is our goal is to have it come out next week. Actually, so look for that. It
Ooh.
should be like. It might even be next Wednesday. It'll be on the Paizo blog, so keep a lookout for that. That does have some guidance for creating characters, so kind
Hmm.
of like here's what to expect, here's specific things that will work well. But like I said, I feel like honestly anything works as long as you don't like hate mechs or something, because in reality, a lot of what happens is going to come from your mech and how you've customized that, more so even than your character.
Mm.
So I really think that anything works. Again, as long as you don't hate mechs, and maybe that can be part of your character arc that you are terrified, but you have to get in the robot anyway. I don't know.
Get in the robot, Shinji.
We
Oh,
had to reference that somewhere.
oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, we've even tagged it for this episode live on
Yeah.
Twitch because we do these episodes live in front of a Twitch audience, and we will be taking
Yeah.
questions as they bring them up. James will be scouring every single bit of code for the right answers. But going back a little bit to that, so like I remember that we did like a mech focused episode, probably in like the
Mhm.
'70s. That sound right, James? Like 70 something.
Yeah.
And like I guess for me, the one question is like, if you're a spellcaster, can you still like cast spells at your enemy from inside your mech? Like, can I put my hands off the controllers and be like, enemy mech, I'm gonna cast mind thrust on the enemy pilot? Or is that like no go?
You know, it depends on the spell. Generally, I believe that trying to cast a spell on an enemy pilot, you won't have line of sight. Yeah, unfortunately, you can't really cast spells on mechs because they're objects, but they're not objects in the base rules anyway, unless you want to
Yeah.
homebrew. And you can like go for it, but in the base rules as written, mechs are not objects when it comes to spells. And I know that that is because spells weren't designed to work with mech rules essentially.
Hmm.
But that being
Mhm.
said, you could still cast spells to do things like if you're fighting organic enemies or enemies that you can see that aren't, encased within a mech, which does happen in Mechageddon, or if you want to cast spells that might, affect the environment, you could still do that. I do see spell casting as being more in the purview of the character combats,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
versus in the mechs, but there's nothing stopping you really. As a side note, I will say that magic and mechs is something that I always wanted us to get to in Starfinder First Edition, and it was kind of on our list of potential things for like a late book that we might have a supplement that had more about like how a spellcaster, like an archetype or just something where, spellcasting can interact with mech combat. And sadly, when we decided to accelerate our 2E plan, that is one of the things that was on left on the cutting room floor. But it's not like we're never gonna do mechs again. So for 2E, sure, we're gonna probably have more magic mechs. But for now, like unfortunately, like not that it's true magic, but like your Witch from Mercury, like, fantasies, you might be a little harder to accomplish, but it's,
Mhm.
it's not that you can't, but
Yeah,
Right.
and you can always home rule stuff,
oh
and like
yeah,
Lava being in chat says, ultra spell cannon. Like for certain spells, spell cannons make
Ultra
sense.
there
spell
you
You know,
go.
big
cannon.
sticks that give you that you hit people with spells with. There's all sorts of ways to do it. I mean, what is a via like a intercom except a scrying? Well, I said that really dumb. An intercom is basically a scrying screen, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
fair, yeah.
But one of the things you said there that I think is very interesting is you mentioned fighting organic. So like does that mean that I'm going to take my mech and fight things that are out of my punching league with my robot too in Mechageddon?
Yeah, so the cool thing about mech combat is that basically when you hop in a mech that's your level equivalent, you can fight things that are generally about 3 levels higher in challenge rating CR than you would
Mhm.
normally be able to at your party level. So yes, we end at 18th level, as I mentioned, but that's also because by the end, you're fighting CR 20 and higher threats. Like, that's just
Ooh.
because of the mech. Like, I think it's CR 23, I could double check, is the final encounter. So, we were getting pretty high up there. And if we took mechs all the way to level 20, it was going to get a little bit wild, like, to say the least. So, that's
Attack and
something
dethrone God.
yeah, which would have been really cool. But you know what? I encourage you in the continuing the campaign section. There's some little hints about that, and I encourage you as a GM or as players to bother your GM to do that because you totally can. So yeah, you definitely will be fighting some big bads. In fact, the premise of Mechageddon is that
Perfect
you
transition.
are yeah, it's a good one, right? The premise of Mechageddon is that you are pilots, your mech pilots, Huskars, as they're called, on planet Dimalco, where
Mhm.
those of you who know about Starfinder lore know that on Dimalco, this planet was completely destroyed by colossi, which are kaiju, about 200 years ago. And the
Mhm.
folks that survived escaped below to all of these bunkers down under the earth, and they have recently in the past like few decades been coming out trying to reclaim their planet, but there's still kaiju running around, so they came up with mechs so that they could fight back, and that is how you begin as new recruits who have signed up to be part of a city defense force fighting against kaiju that come in and try to wreck your city.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
That
Wait,
sounds
we were
like a lot of
talking
fun.
we were talking about Trigger in pre-chat. That's Kurt Logan. That's awesome.
Yeah, definitely Gurren Lagann, like a lot of inspo from there, from Pacific Rim. Like we took myself and the other authors that were working on this project, we took a lot of inspiration from that type of media and just the idea of, you're in a big old robot and you're punching the shit out of a kaiju or out of like a godlike threat or a threat that would be godlike were you not in a several stories high mech. So
Right?
yeah.
Right?
That's
No,
awesome.
that sounds great. So like I guess then because I mean Gurren Lagann ends with attacking and dethroning God.
It does.
Sort
Yeah,
of.
so
The
like
concept of
yeah,
it, maybe.
the concept of God, yes. So like obviously we don't want you to give spoilers for an
Mhm.
adventure path on air because that defeats the purpose of actually playing. But can you give us any hints on what some of like the highest highs of Mechageddon could potentially be? Like what type of hype do people have waiting for them? Like I to give you an example to try to help guide the conversation. One of the reasons I ended up running Strange Aeons for James is because when I picked that book up off of the final book, book 6 up off the shelf and looked at the picture, there's like a picture of a very famous real world tower on the cover of that book. And I was like, oh, this is where we're going. Like what can you tell us that's gonna get people like pumped beyond pumped without spoiling too much?
Well, I will say, obviously, you start out fighting kaiju, so
Sure.
it's like where can you go from there? That's already like a pretty big threat. But without giving spoilers, saying a godlike threat is somewhat appropriate. You will definitely fight creatures and beings and mechs that are empowered by something more than what is on your planet. Again, I don't want to say too many details, Because I don't want to spoil for you, but yeah, you
Absolutely.
definitely are. You're going to be responsible for not just defending the city of New Valor, but really trying to save the whole planet Dimalco from godlike threat that I don't want to spoil.
Mm. Well, obviously, we don't want a spoiler, but this, as we've mentioned before, this is the final installment of Starfinder First Edition.
It
This is
is.
kind of like the big send off. So, like, is what we're going to be seeing, like, how is this like how is this going to make Starfinder players feel like this is like the conclusion of an era? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think just the scale of the whole thing, like the fact that we go up to, well, kind of 20, like a soft 20 because it's mech assisted CR 20 plus, that in and of itself is pretty cool. There's a lot of like some Easter eggs and kind of set up from prior setting events. Like there's some payoff from the drift crisis. Like you can see kind of the effects of that on the planet, just some
Mhm.
things that happened in Starfinder First Edition. There's even some old things from Pathfinder that are coming in and getting updated for Starfinder. And I saw this in chat too when I just briefly looked over there. There are a few plot points that kind of set up for some events of Starfinder too. So it really is kind of like the capstone just in terms of like scale and just how badass yet ridiculous the whole concept of Mechageddon is,
Mhm.
plus trying to wrapping up some storylines and also setting up for some new storylines that we've been broadcasting for a while, but that will definitely be coming on screen more in Starfinder Second Edition.
Right, gotcha. Um, John Goddick in chat, who's also one of our No Direction partners, asks, will we be designing our own mechs in Mechageddon, or does the book have like pre-gen mechs that we use?
Oh, hi, John, and that's a really good question. So we do have some pre-gen mechs. So you, of course, you're new recruits in New Valor Defense Force, and they give you mechs that you get to use, and you've been trained, like doing these little simulations in kind of a VR setting. And you get, of course, your very own mechs, and you are encouraged to begin play with the little pre-gen mech, which there's a couple different options, and there's a few little customizable things like you can swap
Mhm.
out these little modules like, oh, here's some, this is meant for this type of combat, like close combat. This is meant for like more like distance sniping, just different weapon options, things like that. But it is always an option for you as players to work with your GM and customize your mechs from the beginning. So if
Mhm.
you take a look, the player's guide actually has a little preview. It's going to have the first mech that you get. So you can just kind of see what it is. It's again pretty simple. You'll be able to add more, customize more as you level. And if you really don't like it, or you just think I would just rather do something else, there are other options in the book itself. And of course, you can just customize it with the Tech Revolution rules.
Nice, nice. That definitely sounds like a lot of fun and a good way to bring mechs in. You know what just clicked on me? Like you
Hmm.
said, the adventure starts with third level player characters, right?
Yep.
And mechs fight things that are 3 levels higher, so that means we're going to start with fighting like CR6 things.
Yeah.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. That definitely sounds pretty fun and exciting. Sometimes like those are the monsters that you would typically see in like the beginning of the second act of a Starfinder AP. So that's like this is how we roll. This is how we start.
Yeah, we're skipping the like fight space goblins and
The Akatas.
the
Listen,
Akatas, like we love them, but we've seen
listen.
it. We've been there.
I enjoy me a goblin as much as the next person, but every Starfinder AP I've played has made me fight at least one. So like I'm good with that.
I
Let's
don't
fight the
think you
space hobgoblin this time.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't think you fight a single goblin in this AP, so
That's because they're friends now. They're
exactly.
good little guys. So and I guess the next question then is that you mentioned that like you would use the tech revolution rules to level up your
Mhm.
mech, right? So obviously that means you're probably going to need a copy of Tech Revolution, unless this book supports players who might not have a copy. How's that going to work?
So I would recommend that you have a copy of Tech Revolution. I mean, obviously I have to shill for, the company that pays my bills, but you can
How
get the
dare
rules
you?
for free. I know. You can get the rules for free on Archives of Nethys. So if you don't have it, that's a great place to go right now even and just start, reading up on it and learning.
Mhm.
The player's guide, which of course is also going to be a free PDF download, doesn't have the full rules because we didn't want to reprint like 20 something pages of rules, but it
Sure.
does have the 8 pages of of mech combat rules. So how
Mhm.
combat actually works for the player. So all of the, the combat actions. So that is something that if you're a player, that reading that will give you kind of like having that plus the pre-gen mechs, you could just use that and you would be fine. If you want to customize your mech, you are going to need that copy of Tech Revolution or to hop over to Archives of Nethys and read those rules and see what your full options are for customizing. Because there's just so much information and options there. But
Mhm.
yeah, so we thought about that and definitely wanted to make sure that people didn't have to buy like, 3 more books just to run Mechageddon. I would have loved it if we could have reprinted the whole rules in there, but just like with costs already being what they were when we did like the pagination and deciding how many pages go in this baby.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Trust me, I packed it full of things, but there was just no more there was no more room. So
Wow, what an excellent way to transition to the next question. So like Mechageddon, to my understanding, is like one big hardcover book, kind of like the Scoured Stars book, yeah? So
yes.
like as far as I'm aware, this is Paizo's first like 6 issue AP compilation that isn't like Scoured Stars, because Scoured Stars is a whole bunch of society scenarios kind of put together, but this is like an AP designed 6 parts in one awesome book. Does this book have 6 issues worth of like back matter?
So it has technically 3 volumes,
Okay.
not six. But it doesn't have, I don't know. I didn't count the pages.
Mhm.
There is some back matter, and I can talk in a second about those articles if you'd like. I can give some teasers about what's
Ooh.
there.
Yes, give us
Ooh.
teasers.
Yeah, so let me
Feed the
actually,
viewers and the
yes.
listeners.
So yeah, so there are 3 adventures that kind of present like this through line plot, like an overarching plot with
Mhm.
also more tools for how to, enrich that, whether it's
Mhm.
I want more of X or Y. Here's some options for how you can do that as a GM. Um then we have a gazetteer of the city where this a lot of this takes place, or at least the first adventure primarily takes place, with some information about just that city's history and culture, some important NPCs who you probably will meet, or who you can go out of your way to meet, some cool locations that players might visit either during downtime, kind of like go out to the bar and party after you get your first kaiju kill, or go do some training at the barracks. So there's some information there. We have a mech catalog that has a good little group of pre-gen mechs at various levels.
Mhm.
So just to give you and like really cool art. Just to give you an idea of like what, here's mechs that are ready for you to use, but if you just want to take inspiration from them, and make your own, that's totally
Mhm.
cool.
Mhm.
And with those is a couple pages of new mech rules, things that are introduced within those mechs. So, for instance, there's a couple of like new weapons, new mech cores, things like
Mhm.
that that just came through with these cool mechs that authors designed. So I'm like, well, here you can put them in your custom mech too. So that's present. We've got a couple new colossi, so our new kaiju for Starfinder, and article about lore for them,
Mhm.
um, including an extra little tidbit for players that I'm not really sure if I want to spoil yet, but there's something really weird and cool in there. That's all I'll say. And then yeah, just kind of like a small bestiary with a couple of other like mech level threats, that you'll encounter or that a GM could throw at a party. And there's a couple other little options in there as well for like some of the enemies that you'll meet. So there's not a ton of player facing options. It's mostly mech focused, but there
Mhm.
is some. Most of the focus of this book is definitely on the storyline and GM tools to customize the campaign.
Cool, cool. Which one is your favorite? Choose your child.
of like mechs or
Anything, any of those articles. Which one is your favorite?
oh, my favorite. Oh my God. Honestly, that's so hard. So my favorite mech in there is the one that uses music to attack, and everyone that is in the chat who knows about my Macross obsession will understand that. Um, and as for the articles, though, I think my favorite is the Colossi of Dimalco because there's just some really weird shit, honestly, that Rigby, Bendel, and I put in there, and I'm surprised in a way that editors let us get away with it, but it's there. It exists, and it's also just like an explanation for like what the heck happened on Dimalco. Like, what was this awakening that happened 200 years ago and destroyed the planet? There's some answers there, if you choose to accept them for your home game. So enjoy.
So
I really love that.
are they conspiracy theory answers? Like they might not be real. I like that.
They
I
could
enjoy
be.
those.
Yeah, they could be, you know.
I'm a big fan of like when settings are like this is what we think, but this might not actually be true.
Yeah.
Oh
Especially in
yeah.
like a digital age like Starfinder, where like we kind of assume that everything must be true because it's like super future technology, and it's like nah, it doesn't have to be true.
It's true.
So I do have a question. Some of the setup sounds at least at the beginning a bit like Monster Hunter. When you rifle through the pockets of kaiju, what do you usually find?
That's a great
Oh,
question.
that is such a good question. Probably like little pieces of mechs that they've, defeated and used as jewelry or currency.
Got
No,
stuff
Are
that you
no,
can
see?
slap onto yours.
Yeah,
are are
exactly.
are the colossi like so like obviously they're sentient. Are they sapient?
I don't
Like
know. I guess you'll find out.
oh no,
I
oh
mean,
no.
according to the New Valor Defense Force, they're definitely not. They're monsters that are attacking the city, and they're going to ruin everything, and so you have to fight them. So, clearly, not such a thing wouldn't have its own thoughts and feelings, right?
Oh,
Oh
I see.
no.
Managed democracy.
Of
I
course
get it.
not. Yeah, of course
Managed
not. Freedom.
it ended up being Helldivers a year before
It was
Helldivers
all
came out, but a
Helldivers
year
all
after it got
along.
published. Lava Being in chat asks, does this use milestone leveling like Skyward Stars, or does this use more traditional leveling like gaining XP?
It does use milestone leveling, which is how we were able to cram levels 3 through 18 into,
You
a
know,
184-page
I
book.
was gonna ask, so I'm glad.
Yes, thank you. That's a really good question. I can't believe I didn't think to bring it up. But yes, it does use milestone leveling. However, if you are a bookkeeper and you would rather, track, like I said, there are some moments like patrols and different tables, but also just, some guidance for adding more encounters in. So you could fairly easily track, you could choose to track XP and have enough material if you really wanted to go through like each level.
Mhm.
Um as it is, the pace, it does kind of vary. Mostly that decision was made through just thinking about like which levels feel like a lot of new things come online versus like, oh, here's a few things that are cool to have, but we've got a lot of the same play feel. It's not perfect. There are parts where it does move pretty briskly unless you are adding in extra encounters, which again, that's up to you and your group, like how long you want the game to take and if you're enjoying that particular level. But yes, the milestone leveling was basically just so we could get through all the content and have people able to level, because I would have loved to have this be like a 500-page book, but Eric Mona wouldn't let me do it, so
I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm thinking about levels
blame
and like
Eric.
level 9 is not a particularly stunning level if
Yeah,
I remember classes correctly.
yeah,
I mean,
exactly, yeah,
I
so
mean, what you should do is tomorrow you should go into the work Slack and you should make that Wanda Stephen Strange meme where you go, Eric Mona wants a 500-page Absalom book and he gets it, but I want a 500-page
I
mech book
know.
and I'm the villain. How is that fair? And then just post it and see what happens.
He'll just be like, why did you choose violence today? What is going on?
But listen, sometimes you need to be able to speak in the language that other people understand, and for Eric, that's
True.
definitely nerdy comic book memes.
True. That is true. That's absolutely true. But yeah, if you do want a 500-page mech book, and the best way, honestly, is to to buy Mechageddon and give it a good review if you like it when it comes out, and comment about it, and
Mhm.
maybe if it's popular, maybe next time they'll let me. So you never know.
Well, I mean, I think they would have to greenlight you making the mechs for 2E first, yeah?
It's
Like,
true.
they'd have to be like, Jenny, make us robots, and you'd have to be like, yes,
Okay, I need 500 pages.
Yeah, that's
right?
what the pages are for. I mean, it's all the things are already
Exactly.
there. Cannon golems exist in Pathfinder. Just make them big, put a person in them. Boom.
Yeah, yeah,
Right?
that
It'd be
easy. Put some lasers, some missiles.
it'd
Perfect.
be really funny too, because like everyone is like, oh, the three action system is so much easier, and then you're like, but I need 500 pages to do this 20 pages justice.
You got to get the crunch in there, and some things are perfect. Like it's a
Mhm.
running joke in adventure paths for 1E that I always end up making a cannon golem and kidnapping a loved one that is dead. It's just like my
Yeah,
typecast.
yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. I would, as someone who has watched you kidnapping a loved one, yeah,
Hmm.
you do that a lot.
And cannon golems because they're amazing.
Yeah, well, you didn't do that one in Strange Aeons. Yeah,
Yeah, because we didn't have enough time.
you're right. You really didn't. But to be fair, you coated yourself in mithril plate. You were essentially the cannon golem.
I was very powerful. My party was so weak. Bunch of
Yeah.
babies.
You know
S-
what? You know what? They won't be though this time because they're all gonna have a mech, so you would be fine with
you
that
would
character.
you would think we have friends that would still be babies even with a giant robot. Shinji is an archetype for a
That's
reason.
true.
Ah, my paint job.
Fair.
Our
I
friends
mean,
are going to listen to this someday, and the friend I am referring to is going to just go, Alex.
hey.
Yeah. Just like that. Okay, we're on the same page. Good. Um, so speaking about more fun stuff, obviously, I think that like everybody wants this mech book. I think mechs are fun and exciting. It's a new system and it's fun. But I think that one of the things I've seen floating around is that like this like a lot of times the subsystem kind of gets lost in the sauce, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
I one of the comparisons I saw on Reddit was to like Extinction Curse, where you're a member of a circus for like 2 books and then the circus is gone.
Yeah.
Or like going in the opposite direction, some of the critiques of Kingmaker is that you spend more sessions running the kingdom than you do playing the game. How do you feel Mechageddon managed to strike a happy medium between these two?
So when this was first outlined, and as I worked on this with the authors that wrote it, we
Mhm.
talked a lot about making sure that there were always, mechs are the focus, but that there were always combats where we somehow got them out of their mech, or that were likely to happen out of their mech. And I think some of these might be more graceful than others. And because you can't always just be like, "Ha, we shut your mech down and now you can't use it," because that gets really annoying, like
Yeah.
really fast
Yeah.
for most
Yeah.
players. That
Yeah.
only happens like one time. Just so you know, that happens like once. Most of the time it's just like you don't have your mech's being repaired, or you're on foot for some other reason, and like fight breaks out. So we tried to make sure there was a balance. I would say about 85-90% of encounters are mech encounters, but the other
Hmm.
10% or so will be character combat, and that's just what's written. Like, if your party goes off the rails and the GM can support that, it could be different. But we tried to have a good balance so that it wouldn't be like always mechs. Although I hope that if you get this book and play this campaign, like, you want to play mechs because it's called Mechageddon. That aside, though, we also have, the premise being that you are in this military force, and it's certainly possible that the players, I guess, could decide to leave it for some reason. Of course, at
Hmm.
that point, that's kind of beyond the scope of the campaign. But I do feel like there's some calls to action, and the way that it's structured, you get to be in the military. You get, some things happen, and you get a special dispensation to do some jobs for sponsor organizations, so you get to travel the galaxy a little bit, and
Hmm.
not just be confined to Dimalco, but there will come a call to action where you have to come back to Dimalco and deal with something. And even if you've said, oh, I've left the military and I'm just a merc now, or I just do my own thing, there's going to be a reason why you want to work with them
Yeah.
at least one more time. So that's the attempt, to try to really lean into the theme of like, you are, you are in a mech military, but without, just being one note. So I hope it works out. I hope you like
So,
it.
well, honestly, like I don't know if this makes it one note, but like, and correct me if this is incorrect, obviously, but what I'm hearing is that Mechageddon kind of leans all in and puts its poker chips on the table and says, "No, this is the mech AP. You should be
Yeah.
expecting to play mechs."
Yes.
And like, because like you have other games like the ones I mentioned where they kind of trying to have their cake and eat it too, and you're like, "No, the cake is mechs.
Yep.
Eat the
It's
mech."
mechs. Yep. You have to eat the mech cake. Yes.
I I think that I think that is a very bold and refreshing adventure design. This idea that like not every adventure has to be your traditional we go through the space dungeon.
Yeah, exactly. And there's still, there's still gonna be like dungeon-esque
Mhm.
things. They might be mech dungeons, I don't know. But
Mech
yeah, like
dungeons.
mech
I can
dungeon.
I
Just
could
made
go
that
through
up.
the dungeon on my mech. Like there's like places where I would walk like in a
If it's big
dungeon
enough.
crawl.
If it's big
Oh,
enough. Yeah, there is one facility, complex, whatever you want to call it, that is mech sized that you can
oh.
explore, and there's some
Mm.
that are not. So again, there's going to be times, and it's pretty. We tried to broadcast it to the GM so they can tell the players like, look, your mech's not going to fit in there. Like, I guess you could Kool-Aid Man through the wall, and if people really want to do that, then this is good. This combat's going to go a lot different. It's going to be
you
over fast, but
you you say that I know for a fact that if that James would Kool-Aid Man through the wall.
Just because the last time we had a plan, it involved us crashing a space shuttle into a Hell Knight base, and everybody else looked at me like I was crazy, doesn't mean I would do that infinitely. It means
I
I would do it
think you
most of the
would.
time. Yeah,
it worked
I
probably.
once, why not do it again,
They didn't let me
well
do it. It's probably for the
well
best, but they didn't let me
well
do
we
it.
would have gotten shot down if we did that. But it wouldn't have been good.
Yeah, we were hitting the thing anyway. We just had to get shot down right.
Yes. I guess that's true. But no, instead we snuck onto a train station and we stole Hell Knight clothes and now we're just causing problems but actually solving them really?
Yeah, we're bringing the ruckus, the helpful ruckus. And the use of this system seems a lot more refreshing than Skulls and Shackles. As much as I love the little bits of that adventure path after running it, uh, I feel like I am one of the few people that knows all the ship and siege weapon rules, uh, and nobody else ever learned them ever.
Yeah,
Why?
that
Why?
tracks.
Why am I cursed with this knowledge?
Well, I I would say you are cursed with that knowledge, but it came in handy when you played your ballista gunslinger, right?
Right? Because it's funny because nobody knew the rules. Only me, because Skulls and Shackles also abandons that halfway through. So to hear Mecha come at 80% of the way through is so refreshing. Instead of just looking at my ship maps and wishing I would have just burned them on a prior.
Yeah. So far, I'm glancing at chat, and everybody who has commented on that ratio seems pretty excited
That's good.
the ratio.
Yay.
Like, so I think that you're gonna have a popular a sell when you tell people that this is the mech AP, and that means there are more mechs than regular combats. That's cool. How does how does the Mechageddon adventure path account for the massive scale of mechs? Because like we already talked that you can't just Kool-Aid Man into every building you see.
Says
Yes.
you.
That's me. You're
Sounds
right.
like a challenge. So one way is that I was saying, the book itself tries to telegraph to you when an encounter is designed for mechs versus non-mechs. Again, nobody said nobody's gonna come to your house and say like, no, you must be in mechs for this combat. We don't do that. But there are some little symbols, and it's defined in the beginning of the book. That's like, here's a little mech, here's a little person, like it shows you this is a mech combat, this is a character out of mech
Mhm.
combat. And as for scale, that's honestly the hard part with Starfinder in general, because like weapons have a long range, some of
Mhm.
them, and
Yeah.
our maps are only so big, our tables are only so big.
Yeah.
So the way that we have attempted to counter this is having a lot of maps that were drawn and made with a bigger than usual grid, and they're labeled, of course. So we have
Mm.
a lot of them that are like a 10 to 15-foot square, which I know is kind of weird, but for the mech
Mm.
bases, at least it'll work a lot better.
Yeah.
Mhm.
There's actually one in there that's like a 30-foot square, which is pretty wild, but it's kind of the only way that we can really make sure there's room for these mechs, like for huge and larger, like up to colossal sized robots, plus just the range as well, and the enemies they're fighting are often also quite large.
Yeah.
So that's the attempt. It's still going to be like, we use a couple flip mats that are rescaled. We have a lot of custom maps that are printed in the book. I feel like, Foundry or some kind of like Roll20 tabletop simulator online, like a virtual tabletop, is probably like your easiest way to truly simulate the long distance combats. However, when you're playing at home, it's not always what you do. So we did
Mhm.
try to, do the difference in scale so that when you're drawing, you can decide, do you actually want to count out like, okay, this is a 10-foot square. So I'm actually going to draw like two 5-footers, or I'm just going to draw bigger squares. Like, that'll kind of be up to the GM to decide how to run that. But that was our attempt, was
Mm.
some bigger maps. So hopefully it's big enough, because mechs are very large and that is always the challenge with Starfinder,
Right.
is the
Yeah.
scale.
I mean, I think it'll end up fine. Most players tend to either they hate medium ranges. They'll either get in real close and punch each other, or some of them will do that,
Mhm.
and the other ones will hide literally so far away that you don't need to worry about them until the punch guys are dead. So,
And as long as you're like, hey, this person's like, 100 feet off that way. Cause that's another thing, is like, as a GM, I'll sometimes use like an index card or something to just track, like, this person is like 200 feet off and up a building, like, just to
yeah,
remember that that's where they're sniping from, or whatever they're doing. So you could do that too. But
yeah, yeah. Players just hate
Indeed.
medium range. They just avoid it like the plague.
yeah, it's no fun for some reason.
I mean,
Y-
I'm one of the punch idiots up front, so I get it.
Yeah.
I do love being a punch idiot.
Mhm, mhm.
Being a punch idiot is a lot of fun. That's just say. Speaking of things that's a lot of fun, let's say you woke up tomorrow and pow, you're a witch warper and you could witch warp an entire section of your choice into this whole book. Snap your fingers, it's there, no complications. What do you add?
Oh, adding something?
Yeah.
Oh.
What do you think? Do you think I'd make you prune or cull your baby? No, I'm not cruel.
Yeah,
Come on.
no. I think that I would probably just, yeah, I'd probably add more mechs. Honestly, I'd probably add like more magic mechs, or mechs with like some kind of spellcaster
Mm,
archetype, like what I was talking about earlier, because
yeah.
I truly wanted that to exist. But it didn't happen, but Infinite still exists. So all of you listening to this, I guess if you really want it, you can go build it yourself. Or wait till 2E and we'll get there, I promise.
That's true.
We're
Uh
doing mechs. It's gonna happen. Like it's yeah, not a question.
let's say you sit down at the table, uh everything somehow works out that you get to run Mechageddon for your coworkers at Paizo, the Starfinder team, right? You're
Mhm.
the GM. What kind of mech and what kind of character do you expect each of the other developers to bring to your table?
Oh
What
my
what would fit the vibe that you'd get?
oh wow. Okay, well, Dustin is gonna play a kitsune. Like, I
Yeah.
know that he will play that, and I know that his mech would be in some way incorporate the kitsune like aesthetic. So I know there would probably be like 9 tails that are each like javelins or missiles or some shit like that. For the mech, if it was possible, he would do what he could to get as close to that as he could.
I feel like the other thing is that he would somehow try to make a pipe fox.
Somehow he would,
Yeah.
yes. And it might be a literal pipe, but like in a pipe, like a fox
Yeah.
in a pipe, because it's a mech.
Well, because if it's not a pun that can make that'll make you groan, then what's the point, right?
Exactly. Jessica would probably play some kind of like grizzled veteran who's like just done with everybody's shit, but is gonna still like be there for her teammates grudgingly. Um, not really sure what kind of mech she would do. Maybe kind of like a tanky mech. Mike Kimmel. Let's see. I feel like maybe he would be the tank because I feel like he has kind of that protective like dad energy for the party. So he'd probably be like party dad. Um Thirsty would be the most horrible player character that you've ever imagined. Uh he often says that he has to GM because he has very bad like character like player tendencies. And I have seen him as a player and I think it's funny, but it is pretty horrendous if you're GMing. So I kind of don't ever want to experience this. Sorry,
Oh.
Thirsty. He knows it. He knows it because he likes to GM. So he's as horrible as possible whenever he
That's
plays.
that's funny.
Yes.
Isn't it the way GM players are, right? Like once they get
Hmm.
a chance, they're just crazy. Our Forever GM played one character that was evil for 2 sessions, and at the end of that second session, I was like, I'm gonna have to let this man die. I'm a lawful good cleric of Sarenrae. I'm like, I have to just let this man die.
Well, to be fair, he was very frustrated because his first character died because the encounter tactics in Age of Ashes says that they pick you up and they put you down, but not on the ground.
And everybody called that character evil, despite the fact that they weren't. So then he brought
Yeah,
an evil character, and I'm
yeah,
just like, I just gotta let you die. It's a mercy on the world.
it's true. I mean, that sounds like a pretty hilarious party, though. I hope someday you get to do it and we get to hear all about the terrible things Thirsty inflicts upon your group.
He would just be like the most obnoxious, like stereotypical anime protagonist type character, and he would torture me with that. I just know that that's what he would do, like including saying like and stuff like that.
Oh
Like
no.
he would be ridiculous. I know he would. So
That sounds really funny, actually.
it would be pretty funny.
That
Not gonna
sounds
lie.
Yeah, that I mean, I would watch a stream on that hint hint, Rue, if you're watching.
Right?
All right,
Well,
so I've exhausted all but one of my questions, which I'm going to close the stream out on, and you know which one it is because you've seen the list. So let me ask you: is there anything that you want to talk about? Let me hand you the microphone. What do you want people to know about Mechageddon?
that we haven't already talked about. Like I feel like we've kind of gone over a lot of the basics.
Mhm,
I guess it's just that this truly was a passion project for everybody who was involved with it, myself included. It really is a celebration of the Starfinder mech rules as
mhm.
well as just the mech genre, like especially not just anime, but a lot of anime because obviously like most mecha media is anime, but also some other things like we watched like Robot Jocks together and like all these cheesy like old movies and just there's just a lot of there's a lot of silliness in Mechageddon, but there's also a lot of seriousness. There's definitely a through line, like there is a story that at least I hope is that it feels heavy, it feels significant. There are high stakes and there are some heartbreaking occurrences and tough choices, but there's also just a lot of whimsy and, a bit of camp there. And you, as a GM in a group, can kind of curate that as you like, because
No
that's,
more.
if you want to be if you want it to be more grimdark, you can go there. If you want it to be like more silly and hopeful, you can go harder in that direction. But I feel like it's a pretty good mix. And again, the goal with this is it is a narrative, it's a campaign, like, a lot of times I know that APs feel more like a railroad because you just kind of you assume that people at least get to this location so that this event can happen. But there's some of that, but as much as possible, we really tried to make this like customizable. So
Mhm.
here's the base, here's like a foundation, and here's some things that are scripted for you and that are fleshed out for you. But here's also some tools so that you can add to this, you can customize this, and just make this your Starfinder Mech campaign. So just I guess that's it. Also, the art in this book slaps. Like it's so good. Like I keep looking at this and like somehow it looks better in this actual book than it does on the PDF, which is kind of wild.
Mhm.
I don't know how well y'all can see on this screen for those who are watching in Twitch chat, but I could just I'll just like show you some random screen things. Like, like this art is like so good. There's just
This is
so much
definitely why you want to watch
stuff in
live,
there.
because man, oh man, Jenny will just show you things. Oh, those are
Apparently,
like big
yeah.
giant dragon thingies, but they're not
Yeah,
dragons.
those are some
Wow.
kaiju, some new colossi. Let's see. I've got my favorite art piece that I'll briefly show
Show
here.
me.
This is my favorite art piece. This is like a
Oh,
monument in
Oh,
the
that's
city of New
cool.
Valor. But there's some really cool art. Like in addition to, the mechs themselves and like the colossi and other enemies, there's just some really cool like art set pieces that I could see on the side of a sweet van. So, if nothing else, just get Mechageddon for your coffee table or for your shelf because it's really cool. Like I can't believe this book exists. It's so good. So I hope you think so
yeah.
too. I really do. I
The
really
love
do.
letter to Starfinder. Uh,
Yes.
Dustin is in chat. Your coworker Dustin. He wants to know how much fun was it to write up the art orders for the mechs.
It was very fun. I really enjoyed it. I did a lot of the authors, they did get to give me some art notes, so some of that is not just me, but like I had so much fun with the art for this book.
I'd like you to know that the chat is now filled with memes. There
Oh,
is
good.
Thirsty will bring Joel Zakama in a tank top mech. I don't know what that means, but that sounds
I know what
horrifying.
that means.
um, and then we have Dustin is just in a Zoid, Pipe Fox Zoid. We have Tank with bunny ears. Dustin
Yes.
says Thirsty would pilot Demon Bane. And then we have Gonna Make It G Gundam when you talked about the tone of Mechageddon. And then someone said, I mean, the Solarian's hands glow with an awesome power. so so I think that like if our humble little chat is any indication of the sample size of the broader Starfinder population, I think you're in pretty good hands, Jenny.
I hope
Or at
so,
least
because
your baby is in pretty good hands.
yeah. No, I am very, very excited to very soon share this with you.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you want to know more, I know we're cutting the show pretty soon here, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I will be on Paizo Live next week. I think it's Friday, May 3rd. I'll talk a little
Hmm.
bit more. I'll have some more art spoilers in better
Ooh,
resolution
fancy.
than me holding a book up at you. So I'll have that. And yeah, just keep an eye on the website because starting next week, we're going to start releasing like some teasers and some goodies that will all be free to watch, download, read, whatever. So keep an eye out for that because we are about a month out from the release. So now's
Excellent.
the time that we're going to start trickling out
So,
those goodies.
so I know I promised I wouldn't ask any second edition questions, but James and I need to figure out what we're going to do for
Yes.
our show next month. Do we have any like field tests or anything fun coming looking forward to?
We do. I believe it's in May. I can't off the top of my head recall the date, but in May we're gonna release Field Test 5,
Mm.
which yeah, and
Just
that
just
one
keep giving us content so we can hold over. You got to do it.
yeah, so we're gonna have some like little encounters and stuff because we've done a lot of previewing of playable rules, but
Mhm.
we're hoping to give like, okay, here's some ways you can actually do a little field test, more so than just using Pathfinder 2 encounters. So we've got a couple little encounters. Those were all written by Mike Kimmel. We all kind of looked over them. They're really cool. Lots of cool stuff with like not just enemies, but using the environment, like hazards and
Oh.
things like that, which is really neat. And something that we're really hoping to lean more into in second edition because it's not that we did go there in first edition, but I feel like, there's a lot of places where you can do more with, yes, cover, but like there's more that you can do,
Mhm.
both good and bad for the players. So yeah, so check that out. And obviously we're getting really close
Yeah.
to the big release
It's
of
going to be
playtest.
3 months when that comes out. Like, whew, James and I are going to have to be like, man, what are we going to do for episodes until the playtest comes out? And then like things are going to explode and people are going to be like, do more content, James and Alex. And we're going to be like, it's just us two, please.
Yeah, you'll rest while you can because that will
Right.
probably happen.
Yeah, definitely. Dustin says 99 days till Gen Con. Ooh, please don't say that.
That's horrifying,
Well, that's terrifying. Please don't say that.
but exciting.
No, please don't say that. All right. So, last question.
Yes.
Am I going to be able to use a mech to crush my enemies while they're in my mech's cockpit, like how Iok dies in Iron Blooded Orphans?
Okay, so as written, well, I mean, you could, because
Okay.
when you're
Okay.
when you're fighting in a mech, right? Like when your mech, if you like disable the mech, if you reduce the mech to like 0 hit points,
Uh-huh.
you're still alive. Like you eject from that, right? Or you're in the cockpit. So you could do that. You could keep
Uh-huh.
attacking. There's also this really nasty new mech weapon that's in there that is not, it's not used by maybe the best nicest pilots, I guess, but it is a thing. It's kind of this little demonic like acid stinger. So there is a way to deliver pain directly to the pilot that is in this book. I'll give you that little preview for free.
Okay. Okay.
But
Okay.
yeah, so yeah, I guess there's a way you could do that.
So
Yeah.
I can't crush Iok, but I can pierce his heart with a robot stinger. Got it.
Yeah, give him a
That's
little
that's
acid.
that's arguably just as good, wouldn't you say, James?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Well, thanks for joining us on this 84th episode of No Direction Beyond. Remember, as always, if you want to check out the stuff we do, we have our YouTube channel. We broadcast live here on Twitch. The last Wednesday of every month has kind of been James and my jam. So, like, if you booked that away, even if we don't announce it, it's probably going to be that. I am just finishing. I'm going to call them my Odyssey graduate classes because I already have my master's degree, but I had to go back and do more so I could get the certification that I need. So it is graduate classes to electric terrifying boogaloo. So that has kind of thrown me off my game for like getting info about the episodes out, but rest assured, they're over now. I got a 96 on the one final, a 92 on the other. I have A's in all the classes. We're done. Goodbye.
Yay.
Nice.
Yay. So our plan then is that assuming that Field Test 5 comes out before our episode, which it probably will, they usually do like the middle of May, then we'll do our episode on Field Test 5 next month. And if that's not the case, James, we still haven't done Dynamite. We haven't done the Starfinder comics for Dynamite.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's on the
like
list.
yeah,
You could do
I
that in the
yeah,
play in the dead zone
yeah.
between.
Yeah, we'll figure it out because like the way that I see it is that even if like we don't have a dead zone leading up to the release of the playtest, like the playtest will like be good probably for like a few months after that, but eventually like we're just going to be waiting for you to print the final book. So like
True.
at some point we're going to go over the Dynamite comics, mostly because I got to write the back matter for them, and so I want people to know about the back matter in the story because I'm very selfish like that. Remember, we never claim that we're not a biased show.
Yeah. True.
uh,
True.
it's true, 100%. We're very biased people. And then from that, like we'll play it by ear. Remember, you can always join us on Discord. We are a chill community of people where you can chat and talk about anything you want. James and I hop in all the time whenever there's conversations to talk. Just the other day, I was asking questions about getting focus points on a friend's psychic in second edition. So, like, we're all active. You can talk with all of us. And also, if you have an idea for a show that you think you'd want us to do that we haven't thought of, because James and I can sometimes be very small-minded people who just really want to get it done, guys, and we don't think of the obvious things. Let us know. Maybe we missed something. You can tell
Yeah.
us. We'll
Also, it's
listen.
episode 85 today.
Did I say 84?
Yeah.
Did I put 84 in the title card?
No, we didn't put any
Okay.
episode in the title card.
Okay, good. That's fine then. I just have to change it internally. Cool. Whew, you scared me. I hate being wrong, but I'm wrong all the time. The terror of being human. But speaking of terror, it's now time for us to be over, which is a very sad, scary thing. But until next time, you can go beyond with no direction.